Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Ben Kinney, joined today with Chad Himes and Bob Stewart. We're continuing down the journey of a previous episode, or we are going to take a little bit of a different perspective. There was a gentleman who most likely you have not heard of, but you should. There's very little information out here about this gentleman. He was once quoted as saying, "Success is given equally to all if you work at it for 24 hours a day, as I do." He's a beast. This gentleman, I stumbled across this article by apparently a gentleman that goes by Nectar, Neckar, and it was really fascinating. One, because I love this particular topic, and two, because the story in general was really pretty incredible. Let's go back in time a little bit and introduce you to a gentleman named Den Fujita, Fujita. That's Den Fujita. He was born in 1926 in Japan, in Osaka. And sadly enough, in the bombs of the war, World War II, he lost both his father and two sisters. He triumphed through that. Much of his inspiration could have came from his mom, who successfully built a church, a Methodist church there in Japan. And he grew up, attended law school in Tokyo, graduated, and his first real career was being an importer, which I find a little bit interesting, being that Japan had just lost a war to the United States, and Mr. Fujita really took to Western culture and bringing Western products in, and was able to move the past national battles, but you're kind of behind him. Some of the first products that he brought in to Japan were in fashion. I don't know, Bob, you have a wife, so you could probably pronounce this. That Christian Dior?
Dior, yeah. Dior. Yeah.
Handbags.
Handbags. Yeah. He also focused on, he picked that because it was seasonal, right? So he thought people will buy something in the summer and then they'll buy different things of that same thing in the fall. And so that's why he focused on, lines like Dior and some of these upper end luxury brands, you'd call them.
He became a successful importer, and he would take American goods, right, sell them through Japan, and that's how he started to build his empire. But on a trip into the United States, he had the opportunity to visit a restaurant.
Aha! Now we know why it matters to you.
Because I like food?
Not just any kind of food. You have a specific favorite kind of food. We know it.
If you've read the 5 love languages, I think it goes like touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and cheeseburgers.
Right.
That is actually the 5th love language. Well, Mr. Fujita visited McDonald's in apparently somewhere around 1967, if this Nectar expert that we read is correct. And 3 years later, Mr. Fujita had negotiated the rights to launch McDonald's in Japan. Now, McDonald's had already tried to expand internationally, Bob, in a few different countries.
Yeah, they'd gone into Canada and they'd gone into the Netherlands at this point, both with limited, if any, success. In fact, in Canada, they ended up buying back all of those franchise locations a couple of years later. In the Netherlands, they were failing because the strategy of doing McDonald's in the suburbs didn't kind of play out culturally in the Netherlands in the same way that it was playing out in the United States.
Isn't that interesting? McDonald's at this point had already opened 1,000 restaurants. They were truly successful. Ray Kroc had been figuring this out. He had already bought out the McDonald brothers, right? Maurice and Richard by this point. And he had a model that he wanted to expand across borders, and it struggled. Sometimes in life, you get to a point where you have success, and then you think you're going to be successful everywhere. I think the McDonald's brothers themselves thought that once they figured out the first restaurant, they could go do it everywhere, but they failed in their expansion too. It wasn't until they found Ray Kroc that they were able to go successfully expand, right? McDonald's, Ray Kroc says, hey, I can expand anywhere. They start going into these other countries. He runs into the same problem, but at a different level that the McDonald's brothers ran into, right, Chad?
And it wasn't until he found Den Fujita that they found a model for international expansion.
Yeah, in Canada, the pricing was different than he had in America. And as Bob was saying, over in the Netherlands, it wasn't that suburb thing that McDonald's had become that big hit with. So you're right, you can't just pick up and go anywhere you want to go. But sometimes, Ben, it's not the what, it's the or where, it's the who.
Yeah, who you partner with matters, right? Well, Kroc had decided that McDonald's Corporation would expand, and they would partner with Mr. Fujita. And McDonald's corporate ended up with a 50% ownership stake in this expansion. And Den brought in a partner, and he had 25%, and the other partner had 25%, which he eventually bought out, and he started the corporation McDonald's Japan.
You know, there's a quote that was shared that said, and we all know the 80-20 rule. So we won't get into that right now, but it says if 80% of the people say this is wrong, then you do it, right? And if 80% say do it, then don't go that way. I mean, that's what was happening here, because how could you take something as American as McDonald's to Japan?
Yeah.
And it was, he said, I'm going to still make this work. And thankfully, he had his importing business that you had talked about, because that had opened a lot of doors for him in Japan, because he did need to take their model, but he had to modify it a little bit, Ben.
Bob, what was it that made the McDonald's brothers so successful in their first restaurant?
That assembly line concept, they had basically taken all of the inefficiencies out of making a hamburger.
Yeah, they didn't make the world's best hamburger, right? They made the world's quickest, most consistent, reliable, right? No matter where in the world you get that cheeseburger today, it's still the same exact cheeseburger, right? Yeah. They came up with a model. And I think Mr. Fujita saw that that was an interesting model that was going to have some challenges. That, one, it wasn't customary at that point in Japan to eat food by hand.
No.
Maybe you'd say it wasn't proper or wasn't good manners. Mm-hmm. So he decided that in order to launch McDonald's in Japan, he wouldn't do the traditional United States model of going into the suburbs, right? Because that was more traditional. People ate more traditional. He wanted to go right into the city and kind of appeal to the young and hip and the willing to try new things, the ones that are buying the Dior handbags and accepting of this Western culture. His approach in the beginning had a vision in mind that people in Japan would see this as a Japanese business and a Japanese restaurant. And he changed as many things as he had to make it appear Japanese. In fact, in the story that we read, there was some kids from the Boy Scouts Japan that visited the United States. And what did they say, Chad?
Love it. When the kids got there, they said, oh, I didn't know they had McDonald's in America as well.
Right? They just assumed that this was a Japanese business.
So there were two big things that he changed that everybody knows about McDonald's. The first one was the name. He actually changed the name. So, Bob, can you pronounce it?
I don't think I can. We listened to the video of him pronouncing it previously. I'm not even going to give it. You'd give it a shot.
All right. So they changed the name to Makudanarudo. That was what they said instead of McDonald's.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, thank
However,
you.
Bob, you can pronounce in Japan, Big Mac is pronounced
Big Mac.
And the quarter pounder is actually in Japan is pronounced
quarter pounder with cheese.
Wait, it's not a Royale? Oh, wait, sorry, wrong movie, wrong bit.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, now, wait, the most famous icon of McDonald's is either the arch, right? We all recognize the gigantic arch.
Or the creepiest crap clown.
He's not that creepy.
Oh, yeah?
You singing the song in our last episode was creepy.
I have nightmares about Ronald McDonald.
Through your dreams
if you went to Japan, though, you wouldn't have creepy nightmares about Ronald McDonald.
Ronald
would have
McDonald's
had
was straight out of the fourth grade movie you had to watch about not talking to
Come on.
strangers.
he was where Stephen King was inspired to create Pennywise.
Super
right?
scary. Anyway, they changed something.
Yeah, they changed his name. He wasn't Ronald McDonald. He was
Donald McDonald.
Because
I don't know why.
Because the R was a
harder
unique
sound.
sound
correct.
for the Japanese. Was that language, dialect, words? I don't know. Saying it is what I'm trying to say.
Correct.
The other thing that he did was he changed the physical location and size of the restaurant. He decided that he was going to open what we would call today a flagship location, and he would do it in a retail store. I'd call it like a Nordstrom's kind of shopping center, right? And he found this department store, Ginza, something like that, right? It was a high-end shopping district, popular for tourists, that sort of thing.
Sounds like Fifth Avenue in New York or something.
Yeah.
Times Square type of a setup.
And Mr. Fujita figured that if people saw Americans, tourists, eating hamburgers, it'd be an eye catcher, and the locals, the Japanese, would say, well, hey, we should try this out. Interesting approach. Well, this shopping center agreed to give him just 500 square feet in one of their branches.
500 square feet. I mean, think about that. A guest bedroom in your house is probably a little over 100 square feet usually.
Yeah,
10 by 10 is going to give you 100 square feet. It's basically 5 bedrooms in your house became the whole place.
I guess if you went into a McDonald's today, an average one is 1,500 square feet. That would be my guess.
Probably just the sitting area is 1,500.
So 2,000 square feet maybe for the kitchen and the sitting area and the bathrooms.
2,000-3,000.
So they're giving you only 500 square feet.
Yeah. Well, they had another challenge. The challenge that Ginza, the department store, gave them was not only was it only 500 feet, but they had to get it done in 39 hours.
No, come on.
39 hours, like from scratch. They're going to move the purses and handbags and T-shirts or whatever was in that store, right, out of the way, and you get to build a restaurant right here in this 500 square foot box, but you got to do it in 39 hours.
Because they didn't want to interrupt the other store's traffic.
Yeah. So they did it on a holiday.
Okay.
Sunday night, 6 p.m., closes down. They get to start. And they have until Tuesday at 9 a.m. to launch. Not a minute more. And I believe in Japan, business is serious. And when they say 39 hours, they don't mean 40 hours, right? They mean 39 hours. So as the story goes, Ray Kroc shows up for the launch of, I can't pronounce it, McDonald's Japan, basically, right? And they show up a couple days early, and they see the location, but nothing's started yet.
It's empty.
No, there's no stack of buns, right? There's no grill, right? It's nothing. In fact, there was probably still furnishings in there from the department store, and they couldn't believe that it would actually get done. But Mr. Fujita said, "Don't worry about it." And Mr. Fujita had a lot of confidence that he could get it done. Because why?
Well, he'd planned the whole thing out. He'd rented his own warehouse. He'd laid the thing out. He'd actually constructed it inside of that warehouse. He had a team of, I think it was 70 contractors that were in there that did the work. I mean, he laid the groundwork for it. He knew it was going to go up in 39 hours. He'd already done it, and he'd laid the whole thing out.
It's like the brothers went to the tennis court and drew out the restaurant and said, this is where everything needs to be, as we talked about in our last episode. Now he went and did the same thing in a warehouse and built it ready to go.
Yep. He did 3 trial runs.
Yep.
They get to opening day, and they get it done. And turns out it was a success. That right away, it worked.
Yep.
In fact, because of the time and effort that Mr. Fujita put into perfecting the launching and operating of that restaurant, he opened more restaurants right away, didn't he?
I think he'd opened the next one like 3 days later.
Yeah, and then
he proceeded to open basically 2 a week for decades. We're opening up to 3,000 would ultimately get opened in Japan, and he ended up owning 500 or 600 or whatever it was. But
yeah, the article said that the second restaurant opened 3 days later near a train station, and then another restaurant the next day, and then from 1971 to nearly 2000, they opened over 3,000 locations.
2 a week, Ben, for like 28 years. 2 a week they opened.
Since when do you get the math roll on the podcast? Like usually that's Bob.
It's because it's written down. I didn't have to worry about that one. It was in the article.
Okay. In fact, we went out and watched an interview from David Letterman where he talks about, or actually interviews, Mr. Fujita.
Right.
Pretty funny. You guys should watch it. Interesting. It's about 5 minutes long. So, what lessons have we learned so far in this story or this journey? What stands out to you, gentlemen?
one of the things for me is like this whole R&D concept. We talk a lot about R&D, right? So he didn't go try to
wait. R&D. Not everybody knows what you're talking about.
Rip off and duplicate.
All right,
so
thank
not
you.
research and develop it, right? We're going to rip off and duplicate. He went out and said, I want to bring hamburgers to Japan. So he went and ripped it off. But one of the things we talk about in that a lot, Ben, is we don't just rip off and duplicate something. We make those 20% changes, right? Our 10 or 20% that we tweak it to make it better. And he had to do that when he ripped off and duplicated or partnered with ultimately McDonald's and brought him. It was literally the result of those tweaks he made of why the business was successful. So he took their plan, he ripped off and duplicated it, but then he tweaked it to fit their market.
My first businesses were in Washington State, and after probably 11 years of operating business in Washington State, I decided to open up my first out-of-state business with a partner, right, Adelina, in Austin, Texas. And it took us over a year to figure that out. Because things so far away from us, it was hard to do. We'd never done it before. There were things that you can cover up when you're a local business, or when you can have, stick your hands in there, visit, or do the sort of things that you can't do when it's really far away. Yeah. Well, you fast forward, and we've done this in Canada, which was not as hard. And we've opened businesses in the UK, which has been one of the harder things and one of the bigger financial strains of business that I've done. Because we thought if you can do it in the U.S., you can do it anywhere. It's just not the case. There are so many little things that you need to learn and so many things you need to adapt and change. It wasn't until we found a partner in the U.K. that truly understood the U.K. that business started to really flourish.
I grew up, my mom was a big executive at a company called Eagle Hardware that was a big West Coast chain, and Lowe's would end up buying them for $1 billion in the late 90s. And they went into Canada. They got 3 stores opened up there, and they had so much trouble with the bureaucracy that they'd never just dealt with. They'd opened 45 big box retail stores previous to that. They shut it down and moved out of town. Like they left Canada because it was they just didn't understand it, right? And maybe it was they didn't find that perfect partner up there to do it.
People in Canada are funny, Bob.
we learned that today, didn't we, Chad? There are a lot of famous comedians that are Canadian. Way more than I ever would have expected.
Absolutely.
Chad, what do you take away from this?
There's so much for it, and there's some great quotes. And I do have some specific menu items to bring to you, gentlemen, from Japanese version of McDonald's as well, to see are they or are they not real.
At the end of our show?
Yeah, at the end of the episode here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To me, it was models and systems. Models and systems. I mean, what do we preach at Win, Make, Give? It's models and systems, right? And what did he do? He created models and systems based on the models and systems that worked. Reading here in the article, one of the things they talk about in the McDonald's handbook is where to put the burgers on the grill. And the comment is, but in the U.S., with the Yankee mentality that everybody has, right? The grill guys will say, no, I got a better way of doing it. Yet what is McDonald's all about? The brothers built it, that it was a machine that worked. And in Japan, they follow that manual to a T. So you tell a grill man once how to put the patties down, he's going to do it like that every time.
It's funny that the quote from Ray Kroc in there, I think, was that it actually scared him how close they followed his systems and models, because then he had to really make sure they were totally buttoned up and there wasn't that, that room for freestyling.
For American freestyling?
Yeah.
And what he did was he took the models and systems of McDonald's, But then what did he have to do? He had to build the restaurant before the restaurant opened to make sure it would work. He had the models and systems. And how do I build a restaurant in 500 square feet in 39 hours? How do I do it this way? How do I change the slight things that need to be changed? But how do I make the models and systems work? Folks, 80% of the models and systems that Ben has shared over all the episodes we've had so far, 80% of it works exactly that way, whether you're Ben, Bob, me, or whoever you are listening. You might have to tweak 20% for where you live or 20% for your personal world. And that's what he did so well. He just tweaked that little bit that he needed to on an already successful model.
Ben, what stood out to you about Mr. Den Fujita?
Well, you kind of just said the quote that Ray Kroc said, which is, I've been looking for 100% compliance for 30 years. And now that I finally found it in Japan, it made me very nervous. Like, I would take an executioner, not like somebody that chops off heads, but somebody that can execute over an entrepreneur any day. Because ideas are cheap, right? They're very readily available. Like, Adelina, she's an implementer. She executes on the plan, finds the holes, makes it better. But if you give her a plan, she's going to go execute on it, right? And we've built a world around us that has a lot of great executioners, but I don't think at the same level that the Japanese culture demands. I mean, they're the ones that came up with lean, right? The Toyota manufacturing, right? Honda, all these different businesses. It's done to the T. It's done to perfection. There's a minimal amount of waste. They're into constant improvement. And it's amazing how you can take a good business and make it great when you add that to the equation.
You want to learn more about these models and systems like Ben's talking about right there, watch Gung Ho. Right? Now, that's a fun movie.
Gung Ho?
You've never seen... Oh, my gosh,
That
folks.
sounds like an old, early 70s Western. Is that what that is?
It's not. Michael Keaton. Look it up. Watch the movie. Not only will you learn about the systems, you'll laugh your way through learning about
Dave,
the
you know
systems.
this? Dave knows.
Of course Dave knows.
Well, of course, I know. I check him like for the validity of your.
You just think I'm making stuff up.
I could never tell. You're
I wonder if
Canadian.
people actually believe there's a Dave in the room. Like, there is a Dave. He's silent. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't even have a mic.
I've put his picture in our Facebook group once. So, folks, if you're not there, go to facebook.com/group/win-make-give. We have proof that Dave is a real person making us
we have
sound
silent
good.
Dave here.
Yes.
As you study Den Fujita, there's lots of things that stand out that appeal to me. He created a model, he practiced it, he implemented it, he had explosive growth. He also took a tip from Ray Kroc and said, I'm going to own the real estate. Mm-hmm. And he invested in a lot of the prime real estate across Japan over this period of 30 plus years of opening these businesses. And it built an amazing amount of wealth. In fact, after Den passed away in 2004, his family sold just a 25% stake in the holdings company they had in Japan for $668 million, which means, Bob, the entire thing was worth $2.4 billion and some change. Well, Den was so successful at opening up the McDonald's throughout Japan, he was given other opportunities like
Toys R Us came to him and worked with him to bring Toys R Us to Japan.
Yeah, and he became a owner of Toys R Us.
Yeah. The other thing he did off of this is when we talked about this in the Welsh series, he made these ancillary businesses off of this thing, right? So he imported the potatoes, right? So he stood up, and he was already an importer before this, but he was the guy that imported the potatoes, and his company imported the meat and then they just turned around and sold it, right? But so he was manufacturing business ideas all along the way here. And that Toys R Us thing, when we talk about getting lucky, right? He got lucky because he'd been on the ground doing it and a proven track record, and they found him and seeked him out. And some people might call him lucky, but not lucky.
He earned the right that other people bring their luck to him.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting what you just said. He had to import things from outside of Japan. Potatoes would be an example of that, right? He already had experience in that. And when you import things, you pay money to import. And there's a margin in that. He just decided that if I'm going to pay somebody, he might as well pay himself. Yep. So he controlled and owned that business as well. If he's going to pay somebody for the real estate, he might as well pay himself. Ray Kroc came up with the same idea, right? You should own that, right? You should own the real estate that your franchises are on.
You do that. Some of your businesses live inside of buildings that you now own.
Yeah. Our businesses that we own use our software.
Yeah.
Right? Our software uses bubble. It's all kind of connected. How do you control the transaction in your world? And instead of going off and doing something entirely different, how do you add on these ancillary or parallel businesses that lift everybody up at the same time? Now, Chad, let's have a little bit of fun.
All right. You ready?
There's no cheating on this one. Bob and I have no knowledge of whatever you're going to say, unfortunately. So tell us the game today.
Do you ever really have any idea what I'm going to say?
We have no control, sometimes knowledge.
Is it or is it not a menu item on McDonald's Japan?
All right.
Okay, that's the game.
That's the game.
Okay.
Is it or is it not? We just did some McDonald's failures. Now we're going to talk about is it or is it not? And Dave, insert game show music here. Perfect. All right, so here we go. Is there something called the McDonald's Shaka Shaka Chicken?
Yes. I don't think that you could have made that up on the spot.
He's
That's
not-
why I'm
he's-
saying
he's
I've written these things
He's
in
not
advance.
creative enough.
I don't think so.
So we're going with yes.
Yes, the Shaka Shaka Chicken is
We bet on
real
your
thing.
lack of creativity on that one. Go ahead,
All
next.
right. Is there something called the McPork?
That sounds like Chad's creativity. I'm going to say no.
Yeah,
Ben,
I say no.
is there a
too.
McPork?
I'm going to say no.
There is a McPork.
Oh.
Yes, thank you. It was very popular. Between the buns, you would find shredded lettuce and a sausage patty doused in garlic and black pepper sauce. Is there the full moon cheese tsukami burger?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course, because I can't make up all these words.
Yeah,
right?
you don't even know what that is.
I don't know.
Yeah, next one.
All right, the next one. Do they have a Mega Mac?
Yes.
Now, Bob, I did talk about
Yeah,
this
you
one with you before.
Yeah, so if it was me, I would have named mine the Mac Daddy. And I would have had Sir Mix-a-Lot breaking it down for us on the commercial, right?
Yeah, that would have been really good. I bet it would have sold at least like 3 or 4 more than they sold.
Yeah.
What is the Mega Mac, though? You told me earlier.
It is the double Big Mac.
What?
It is 4 patties.
Oh, yeah. That's my
4
style.
I gotta see a
patties.
picture of this. I got a big mouth. I have a hard time getting a Big Mac in my mouth right now.
Yeah, you do have a big
That's
mouth.
impressive.
Next one.
All right, the next one. Do they have the Mega Potato?
The Mega Potato.
The Mega Potato.
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right, gentlemen. It's the large French fries. When you combine 2 large fries, you get the order of Mega Potato.
Has every single one of these been yes again like last time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
maybe
you're
he's
finally
looking up.
catching
He's
on.
reading.
Okay, next one.
Because these are just too good to be true. The last one I will ask you, do they have a McFry potato chocolate sauce?
They dip the fries in the chocolate sauce.
Do they have a McFry potato chocolate sauce?
You know, I dated a girl once, Bob, that used to dip her fries in the milkshake.
No,
Wendy's?
not
Like
in the
at Wendy's?
milkshake. It's the Frosty at
At Wendy's.
Wendy's.
It doesn't matter. Freaking ticked me off. Like
It's disgusting.
you don't put the fries in the milkshake.
disgusting,
You don't
Chad.
put the fries in the milkshake.
Dave,
Disgusting.
please tell me you're on my side.
This
No.
is going to be our question
All
in
right.
the Facebook group, by the way. Do you dip fries in a milkshake or
No,
a Frosty or
you
whatever?
dip them in the Frosty.
That's
the
sick.
Frosty tastes
Go to
good.
our Facebook group and answer the survey question.
Do
Do
you
you
dip
dip your
fries?
fries in the milkshake, or are you
By
like
the way,
the rest?
this is not a question where you're like, I don't know, I don't really have an opinion.
Oh,
you
yeah.
have an opinion. It's disgusting.
Bob, do you use ketchup on your French fries?
Yes.
No, you do not. We know you
Well,
do
I
not.
use tartar
You're
sauce,
a
but I'll
tartar
dip it
sauce.
in ketchup.
Same thing. Same thing. Well,
McFry potato chocolate sauce. It was my last one.
Yes.
Is there such a thing?
you already ruined
Really?
it for us. Yes.
Well, absolutely, Bob, because I've only been yeses on everything, folks. It is McDonald's fries covered with chocolate sauce.
Chad sucks at games. Like this whole thing.
These were too fun to even make up things that didn't exist. They were good enough on their own.
So I read a lot, and I read a lot of articles. And this article, we're going to put it in the show notes because it's that good. And we should reach out to this guy and interview him or talk to him, the guy that wrote this article, because
All right.
he's
got
good.
some other ones in here.
Yeah, I saw
Dan
it.
Gilbert. We were talking about Rocket Mortgage earlier today.
Yeah, we should track this guy down because he's pretty smart. Read the article, and then Chad, how do we end all these?
Well, Ben, I want to leave everybody with a quote from Den Fujita as we close this episode out. And he would print these words on all of the writing tablets used in all of his companies. Look not with your eyes, but with your heart and mind. Then opportunities will find you. Look not with your eyes, but with your heart and mind. Then opportunities will find you. We're glad you found us here at Win Make Give. We do hope you come join us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/WinMakeGive, and answer the fries in the milkshake question and all the other questions we throw around in there. Until our next episode, wash those hands, and as always, do good.